Always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Albania was hoping to be asked to start European Union membership talks this month, but that now seems unlikely to happen. EU leaders want to see a country with stable democratic institutions. But in the past week, President Ilir Meta has cancelled local elections that were scheduled for the end of the month because the opposition Democratic Party refuses to take part in them. Making matters worse, the ruling Socialist Party has questioned President Meta's constitutional authority to change the date. There's no constitutional court to rule on the matter because its judges' finances are being investigated and they are suspended. So Albania presents a picture of anything but a stable democratic state, which is a precondition for membership. Today on Talk to Al Jazeera, the President of Albania, Ilir Meta. Mr. President, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much for interest you are showing to my country.
The situation in Albania today is described as a constitutional crisis. The Constitution describes Albania as a parliamentary republic, which means that you are elected by Parliament and serve while you enjoy the trust of Parliament. Parliament has the power to remove and replace you with a large majority as long as the Constitutional Court also ratifies Parliament's decision. But it may only do so if you have committed an egregiously unconstitutional act, in Parliament's opinion. So do you think that you have committed such an act, and do you think that Parliament has indeed begun such a process of replacing you? Is that what we saw in the censure motion brought to the floor of the Parliament?
Yeah, I want to assure you that I don't want to make use of this interview to talk about the Parliament and about its responsibilities, but it is very clear, according to the Albanian constitution, that when the Parliament can dismiss the President, and it's very clear when the President is doing a very grave constitutional violation, which also should be verified later from the Constitutional Court. So I have to let you know that there is no article in the Constitution of the Republic of Albania that has been violated from the President of the Republic. And I want also to assure you that the constitutional order of Albania is based on political pluralism and free and fair elections. And what the President has done is exactly showing his commitment to protect political pluralism in the country, and also to guarantee free and fair elections for all citizens of Albania, because Albania was going to have voting for 45 years during the communist regime, but everyone knows that there is a big difference between elections and the voting.
As you know, last month, millions of Europeans went to the polls to elect a new European Parliament. Albania has had trouble deciding when to elect 61 mayors. Is Albania ready to join the European Union?
Albanians, the citizens of this country, they have been ready even earlier to join to you. But in the coming hours and in the coming days, the political leadership of the country is going to be tested if it has the right maturity not to be an obstacle for this aspiration of the Albanian citizens, because here more than 95% of the Albanians are eager to join to the European Union. And with my decision, I wanted to give time to the leaders to reflect, to calm down, and to create the conditions for reasonable dialogue that demonstrates maturity, first of all towards our citizens here, but also towards the European Union, that this country, yes, is ready to make another major step ahead.
All right, but again, going back to the constitutional issue, the argument against you being expressed by the government is that you do not have the right to cancel an election.
I'm not talking about political speculations. I assure you that this is a very solid constitutional decision. The only authority, supreme authority, is the Constitutional Court, which can judge on this decree. But what I want to assure you, this is waste of time, what we are discussing and what they are debating, because this decree was published in official newspaper, and according to our constitution and legislation, from that moment it is an obligation of every institution, central or local, to implement it.
All right, but politically speaking, Prime Minister Edijem Ramom says, I am not going to go back to the dialogue with the opposition to find a consensual date for an election. They had a chance to register, they decided to abstain, and I'm going to stick to what we originally agreed to before the president. What is the solution to this? Are you going to recognize the result of the local elections if they happen?
Now, after this decree was signed and came into force, there is no formal and legal date for the elections about 30th of June. About this claim of the Prime Minister Rama, I want to let you know that this precedent of postponing general local elections in the country was created for the first time in 2006 and 2007, when Mr. Rama was opposition leader and mayor of Tirana, and he wanted an additional document to be included in this technical process in order to participate in the elections. And that time, for the very first time, we had such precedent, which later also was repeated in different cases. So this is not something new. Of course, this is not something normal, because when everything is going well, there is no reason to take such decision. And I hope that our Prime Minister is going to be more aware about this ruling principle, that the government bears greater responsibility for the whole country, not only for its supporters or militants. And I hope that they are living up to this responsibility and reflecting soon in the best interest of the country.
But will you recognize the results if the government holds this election?
There are no elections on 30th of June. This decree has been published in official newspaper, and this is now obligation of everyone to implement it.
So there are two sharply distinct interpretations of the Constitution, which the Constitutional Court would have to adjudicate. There is no Constitutional Court because its judges are undergoing ethical review, they're being vetted.
Yes, there is only one supreme authority that can judge such decree, which is the Constitutional Court, and which is not functional for the moment, as you rightly mentioned. And everyone knows that the President of the Republic has done every effort for a long time to avoid such a situation, but this is not anymore important. And now, in these conditions, this decree cannot be contested from any court in the country. And of course, it is a decree which I have signed in front of the Albanian citizens, taking all the responsibility for that, and I'm sure that I have done the best to avoid this further escalation of the conflict between the government and the opposition, and to give to both sides the possibility to calm down, to reflect, and to enter soon in dialogue for the best interests of all Albanians. And in particular, in these days, before these very important decisions are going to be taken from the member countries of the European Union about the European future of the Albania.
Let's talk about the domestic political aspect of your decree for a moment. You have, as you say, expressed in that decree the desire to see no threat to public security and no threat to democratic stability. You've asked the two sides to come together under your aegis, but so far the Socialist Party has not done so. Some of the smaller opposition parties have met with you, and that seems to be the beginning of a dialogue, but we have no indication that it will encompass the main players. Quite the opposite. The socialist-led government says that it's going to proceed with the election, and the democratic opposition says something rather cryptic, but certainly not conciliatory. Mr. Basha on Thursday said that he calls upon citizens to do whatever European citizens are forced to do when they are faced with the prospect of an effective coup d'etat, which is how he describes the government of Edijem Ramom. So are you concerned that your decree doesn't seem to have had the desired effect?
I'm very determined to do my best for creating the necessary conditions for dialogue and for a viable solution, because this is very important, not only for the stability of the country and the democratic cohabitation of our citizens, but this is very important for the European future of Albania. And with holding elections without opposition, this is completely an investment against the European future of this country, which is a national goal of all Albanians, no matter of party affiliation. And also I'm realistic that after this 4 or 5 months of very tense confrontation, as you have also followed and reported, the solution cannot come in 2 days and 3 days. But I'm not hopeless that also Mr. Rama will come back here and other leaders, and we conclude an agreement and a solution which will help the country not only to avoid this divisive climate, but also which will help the country to demonstrate to European Union and to all the partners the right maturity, and that this is a country which is improving the democratic standards and not downgrading.
Let's talk about the European aspect of your decree to cancel and postpone these elections. You have said that you want to safeguard the Copenhagen criteria of holding free and fair elections, of guaranteeing democratic institutions function properly with the greatest possible participation of the parties concerned. And on the 9th of June, you issued the decree in which you stated these things very clearly. On the 10th of June, Prime Minister Rama went to Brussels and met with the President of the European Commission. He said that I'm in favor that these elections should take place on June the 30th. If not, this would harm the European perspective of Albania. Mr. Juncker has a completely different interpretation of what is in the interests of your European perspective to you. How do you explain that?
President Juncker is also a great friend of mine, and he's a great Democrat, but I'm sure that he was not reported that these elections of 30th of June practically or substantially were voting and not elections, because they were elections without the opposition. I'm sure that he has not been fully aware about it, and in this frame I see what he was saying as very correct, but we know very well that now this is not anymore the responsibility of the Commission, because the Commission has made a positive recommendation for Albania. Now this decision is going to be taken at highest political level, and the messages have been clear that the elections without opposition do not help the European progress of Albania.
It does seem, however, that regardless, Albania will not receive an invitation this month to start membership talks with the European Union. How do you think this is going to be received in Albanian society, and what do you think is going to be the political impact?
I still pray that Albania is going to open the negotiations as soon as possible, hopefully within this month, both with Northern Macedonia, but it's very important in the coming hours. It's very important in the coming days that we show maturity to overcome this crisis, and this is the only way that Albania to have better chances for positive decision in June or in September. This is now not the most important, but as soon as possible. But if the crisis is going to last, the chances will be undermined for years, not for months. This is clear.
Why do you say that? Do you think that the current political confrontation is the chief criterion for being invited to start membership talks?
The functioning of democratic institution is fundamental for every decision at the highest political level. And as I have underlined, the standards of the free and fair elections have been always decisive for such decisions. Albania was having some problems and concerns also in the past about elections, and if we do not show normality and progress now related to the future general local elections, it will be a disaster.
There are also other concerns that European member states have expressed, and they are recorded in the European Commission's report, particularly a disappointment with the lack of high-level convictions of organized criminals, and particularly in drug crime and trafficking. Does Albania continue to have a serious problem with organized crime, in your view?
Rule of law and tangible progress in the fight against the organized crime and also corruption is fundamental for going ahead. Albania has initiated very important judiciary reform, but there is much more to be done to show more political will to implement it correctly, and also to be more reliable partner with all international partners in fighting this organized crime.
So you think that there is still a lot of progress to be made. Why has it taken so long for the judicial review? Why has Albania been without a constitutional court for 18 months?
The lack of constitutional court, it's a big problem for the country, and it helps government to take additional authority which is not in the constitution of Albania for that. But anyway, I hope that things will be improved in the coming months, but now it's important to address this crisis and to take more time for all the reforms that are required to be implemented.
And if Albania does not receive an invitation to open membership talks this month, do you think that there is going to be a danger of widespread emigration, legal or illegal, away from this country? We're already seeing indications that there are large numbers, in the tens of thousands of Albanians who are leaving Albania to look for work elsewhere because salaries are low. Unemployment among adults is 12%, but among young adults it is 22%. Very difficult numbers to manage.
I don't like to describe the worst scenario that you are mentioning. I am determined to fight for the best scenario, which means that soon we find a solution, we show the right maturity, and our citizens have more confidence for the European future of Albania, and also our partners are more convinced that we deserve opening of negotiations as soon as possible.
Let me go back to what you have identified as the principal obstacle, which is the political situation in the country today. Extremely polarized, very confrontational, and you seem to be getting dragged into it now, whereas you waded into these very powerful political currents in order to try and save the system. The system seems to be sucking you in. Prime Minister Rama impugned your neutrality in Parliament on Thursday and said that you have ceased to have the right to hold your office because you have effectively become partisan in your position. You've effectively backed the position of the Democratic Party opposition, and you have asked for elections to be postponed. The government position is the opposite. Do you think that you are in danger of losing at least the image of your neutrality in society?
Mr. Rama has no reason to be disappointed with me, because one of his strongest arguments when he proposed me as the president of Albania, that time we were partners in a ruling coalition, was exactly that he couldn't find someone that could work to guarantee the rights of the opposition than Mr. Meta.
One final question, Mr. President. Does Prime Minister Edijem Ramom enjoy your trust and support as head of government in this country?
This question is something that I was answered earlier when I have confirmed him as Prime Minister of Albania. I was expecting from him as staying longer in office, to be more flexible and more cooperative with opposition. First of all, because the challenges the country is having ahead can be addressed successfully only based on broad cooperation, and I'm looking forward to see him to leave behind these divisive rhetorics that he uses too much, which is not helping broader consensus for and more all-inclusive policies for what the country needs to be united.
Mr. President, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you. Thank you.